Today we're talking Elf, Tribal, and Oathbreaker. We're going to look at what planeswalkers we have to choose from, which ones are the most popular, and what signature spells are most commonly used for Elf Tribal. Then we'll check out some of the best cards to add to the 58. Let's start with the least used option and work our way up. First we've got Nissa Vane for 4 mana. +1, search your library for a card named Nissa's Chosen and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle. +1, you gain 2 life for each elf you control. -7, search your library for any number of elf cards and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Nissa is ranked 120th in popularity, so not very popular really. I think she's a little bit underrated though. That first +1 would be a lot better if we could use it more than once. That's the real downside here. That second +1 is pretty good though. I know life gain doesn't win you the game, but if you've got a token strategy, that could gain you quite a bit of life over the course of the game, if you can keep her on the field, and that starting loyalty doesn't really help you there. Moving on, we've got Freylease Landlar's Fury for 5 mana, starts at 3 loyalty, +2, create a 1/1 green elf druid creature token with tap, add green to your mana pool, -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment, -6, draw a card for each green creature you control. Freylease is ranked 67th in popularity, so moving up. Although this card is far from busted, it kind of checks all the boxes for me. I love pluses that make tokens to protect your planeswalker. I love planeswalkers that ramp, planeswalkers that have removal on them, and card draw, and yeah, this does it all. What it does not do is have an activation that, you read it and say, holy cow, yeah, that's going to win me the game. We're going to have to rely on the other cards in the 58 for that, but that's fine. That's pretty much what Tribal is about. Next up, we've got Tyvar Kell for 4 mana, starting at 3 loyalty. Elves you control have tap, add black. +1, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target elf. Untap it, it gains death touch until end of turn. 0, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. -6, you get an emblem with, whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until end of turn, and you draw 2 cards. Tyvar is ranked 49th in popularity, which is pretty good. It's not hard to see why he's a little bit more popular. He's got black for starters. So not only do you get the black or black-green elves, and there are definitely some good ones, but you also get black removal, and we know green is really not that great at removal, so that is a big upside. Like Freylease, this guy can ramp, make creature tokens, and draw you cards. He doesn't have removal if you don't count the death touch thing, and I wouldn't. But because of his color identity, we can put so many good black removal cards in it that makes up for that. But we do have one more option, and it's arguably the best one. Tyvar Jubilant Brawler for 3 mana and starting at 3 loyalty. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. +1, untap up to 1 target creature. -2, mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. While this guy does not say the word elf on him anywhere, he works so good with elves, especially with mana-producing elves. You can cast a Mana Dork, tap it right away to cast another Mana Dork, and if you're lucky, tap it and cast another one. That +1 helps you keep the chain going, and that -2 synergizes with all the low mana stuff in your deck. This Tyvar is so good that he's the 7th most popular Oathbreaker in the format, as well as the #1 most used creature tribal planeswalker in the format. Now let's talk most used signature spells. For Tyvar Kell, the most used option is Elven Ambush, an instant for 4. Create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token for each elf you control. And for Nissa and Freylease, the most common is Elfish Promenade, a sorcery for 4. Create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token for each elf you control. What's the difference between these two? First of all, the other one was an instant, which is better in that way, but this one is a tribal sorcery. So even though it's not a creature, its type is elf, which is pretty weird. So it can trigger a few cards that say, like, whenever you cast an elf spell. If you don't have any of those in the deck, then you probably want the instant one. That would just be strictly better, I would think. For Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, most popular is Glimpse of Nature. For just 1 mana, whenever you cast a creature spell this turn, draw a card. This works so good with his static ability. If your deck is built for it and you get a little bit of luck, you can dump a significant amount of creatures out on the battlefield with this. Glimpse of Nature is actually a reasonably popular signature spell with the other ones too. You have to work for it a little bit more, but cards like Concordant Crossroads that gives your creatures haste can get you churning out creatures, and I think Heritage Druid and cards like that would work too. Second for Jubilant Brawler is Awaken the Woods. For X green green, create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. This seems a lot less tribal focused, but I wanted to mention it anyway. Vitalize could be a good signature spell option, untapping all creatures you control for just 1 mana. It's third most popular in Jubilant Brawler, but appears on the top of signature spell list for some of the other ones too. For Tyvar Kell, Gruesome Fate is the second most popular. Each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control. Heroic Intervention is popular for any of the 3. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. And then Collected Company, Finale of Devastation, and Genesis Wave are all less popular but still very notable, sometimes used signature spell options. Now we're going to talk about cards to put in the 58. You know what? The expression cards in the 99 for Commander, that sounds pretty good, but cards in the 58 somehow doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? Anyway, these next cards come in on the top of the list for most used in Elf Tribal. At the very top of the list, we have the low mana Mana Dorks. It looks like a lot of the Elf Tribal decks are foregoing the higher mana cost Mana Dorks. Most decks seem to be trying to cast Mana Dorks on turn 1 and turn 2, and like turn 3, maybe cast a Lord, and that's the next section. We've got a lot of good options for Lords here, even in the 2 mana slot. I'm going to put them roughly in the order of most used. I think my personal favorite might be Jorga Warcaller for his versatility. Sure, you can cast him on turn 3 as kind of a mediocre Lord, or you can cast him when you get a little bit more mana, and he gets just better and better depending on how many times you kick him. And these Elf decks, they can make quite a bit of mana, so I think that'd be a great option to have. Another notable one for me is Leaf Crowned Visionary, which can draw you cards, and speaking of which, Beast Whisperer is in the majority of decks. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This can offer a huge amount of card advantage in a deck like this. Next up, we've got some ways to make tokens. This is especially good if our signature spell is one of those create an elf token for each elf you control spells. And then we've got some miscellaneous stuff that winds up on the top of the list. Rex Sage destroys target artifact or enchantment, and Well-Wisher and Essence Warden can gain you a whole bunch of life. Allosaurus Shepherd makes it so your stuff can't be countered and can also pump up your team. Shaman of the Pack, when it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. And Crater Hoof Behemoth, not an elf himself, but a great way to close out the game. As far as which Planeswalker to pick if you're building Elf Tribal, I think that depends a lot on what you want out of the format. If you build for power, I think Tyvar is one of the best in the format, but I do think the other ones have earned their place as solid, fun picks. I'd like to make a few more of these tribal videos, definitely a zombies one. We have quite a few zombie options. Dragons are also reasonably popular with 2 good options and a couple that I guess could count. We have several options for soldiers, 2 great ones for werewolves, and there's a couple for wolves too that I might clump in with the werewolves, I don't know yet. Some very good vampire planeswalkers, a couple decent ninja planeswalkers, and a few oddballs like Insect Tribal one, a Legendary Matters one, and even a Gideon Tribal, which I guess would count because Gideon can become a creature. If any of that sounds interesting to you, hit that subscribe button, and if you could, hit the like button too on your way out. That helps out my channel a ton. Oathbreaker's not real popular, and every like goes a long way in pushing the channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.